Hey, everybody, and welcome in to another episode of Speaking Eagles, the premier Pennsylvania football podcast. I am Nick. He's Ricardo. We've got a fun episode coming at you guys today. Roster prediction time. The regular season is so close. We can taste it at this point. It's so close, Ricardo.
Dude, it's almost here.
Already playing their third and final preseason games. So we'll have some takeaways from that. A little stock up, stock down for you. But roster predictions is the big topic of today. But Ricardo, how you doing, my man? We are so close, dude. So close.
Dude, I'm good, man. It's what is it, like 15 days now, 14 days? That's like, it's crazy that it's almost here, man. How are you feeling,
though? it's truly on the horizon at this point. I mean, it's that time of the year where it's like now, because they got rid of that fourth preseason game, now it's like that awkward period where you have like 2 weeks of just like time to just wait. But I don't know. We're in a fantasy football league together, so we'll have the draft for that. That'll get us over the hump, and then all of a sudden we'll be sitting here on Thursday Night Football. Chiefs and Lions are opening it up before we got the full weekend slate. So yeah, it is close. But the topic for today, we've got the roster projections, which we'll get to in a little bit. We'll do a little bit of stock up, stock down. But both of these teams. Actually, both of them played on Thursday of this week and got their final preseason games in. So we'll do some quick takeaways from that game. And you know what? We'll start with the Steelers this week because I feel like we've been doing a lot of the Eagles. But I'll start off with the Steelers and just some of my takeaways. Dude, I mean, Kenny Pickett and this offense look really, really good. I mean, how is that not the main takeaway on that one? You know, the first quarter that Kenny Pickett and the first team offense is there. He gets a nice deep ball to Deontay Johnson. He throws a touchdown. Actually, no, it wasn't a touchdown. It was just short to George Pickens. And, man, it's like this offense is firing on all cylinders. The week prior, you get those long runs, or you got the long run from Jaylen Warren. Najee Harris got some burn in this game. And, man, they are just playing really well right now that it's like, you know, we were texting back and forth about this. You just want it to be week one. You want these guys to get on the field in a meaningful game. So, I mean, so awesome to just see them clicking like you know, not missing a beat really from where they left off last year. And it's been a really stellar preseason for this first team offense.
Yeah, Kenny Pickett went 4 for 4, 84 yards, and then capped off with a rushing touchdown there by I think it was Najee or who was it exactly?
I think all three running backs scored a touchdown in this game, actually.
Yeah, I was going to say, it was. I remember who was first. It might have been Jaylen Warren who scored first, but like still, that's like just the confidence that the offense is playing with right now. Kenny Pickett, like more specifically, is I mean, it's kind of building off the momentum of last season. And I sort of look at that and it's like him kind of taking those deep shots, airing it out a bit more. It's going to open up the run game a bit more, it's going to make them just that much more dangerous. I feel like that wasn't the deep ball wasn't quite in the offense last year. It was more focused on the run game, obviously run heavy, run first offense. But like seeing this is just going to open a whole nother facet of the offense. And that's a really good sign going into week one. Oh my, it's crazy. Like, I'm excited for the Steelers offense and this team in general. They're just playing so well.
No doubt, man. I mean, I don't even think this is a hot take, but I don't know if there is a single quarterback that has played better in the preseason than Kenny Pickett has. I mean, he's done it all with, like you said, airing out the deep ball. I mean, his completion percentage has to be through the roof. I don't know what it is, but like you said, 4 for 4 in the last game. And really, I don't think he has many incomplete passes through the preseason at this point. Yeah. Now, granted, I mean, against the Falcons, he was going against the second team defense. They weren't playing any of their starters. But even still, I mean, you just want them like getting these solid reps and doing stuff like taking these deep shots that they weren't doing last season. And, you know, that's just so huge for this offense. And it's just it's gonna be a complete other dimension that we didn't see last year. It's gonna be added on top of the things they already do well, like run the ball.
Yeah, exactly. And I just I don't know if you're gonna touch on this quote, this Mike Tomlin quote that is just so good. I'm sure you've read it, but when talking about the preseason, like playing the starters, he said, quote, "I just think it's difficult to box without sparring. The preseason is an opportunity to spar and sharpen our sword for battle." Like that. Oh my, like that really sums up who he is as a coach, as a person. That's just like, that fired me up like just hearing that. Like such an iconic quote. Like,
Yes,
I
dude.
mean,
And
it's the preseason.
he doesn't care that some of these, talking heads are like, don't play your starters in the preseason. Like, he's got an agenda and he says, we're going to get ready for week 1 and I'm going to put my starters out there for X amount of reps and they're going to go and they're going to be ready. They're going to be ready to go into battle. And that's exactly what it is. And it's hard to not be juiced up for, a really a tough week 1 matchup. I mean, we'll talk more about the schedule in next week's episode, but a tough week 1 matchup against the 49ers. But, they've sharpened their blades. The sword is ready to go. Like, this is a team that, is going to be ready to put it all out there on the field week 1. There's going to be no holding back. So it's hard to not be amped up and juiced up for that, given how they've played in the preseason. My second, quick takeaway from this game as well is not only is it the offense, but, we saw a lot of the starters on defense out there as well. Both TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith were out there. And I mean, seeing TJ Watt get a sack in that the preseason finale, I mean, man, that got me ready to go for this regular season, week 1 against the 49ers. And, again, it's like you're going up against second team offensive tackles, but I mean, he won that matchup and got the sack. And, it's just like this whole outside linebacker group to me is something, we'll get into a little bit in the 53-man projection that we're going to do in a couple minutes here. But, having him healthy is, the biggest thing for the Steelers defense. We saw what the difference was when he was on the field last year versus, the 8 games that he missed or whatever it was. And he's just such a difference maker. So seeing him get the sack, and, we also saw the safety trio of Keanu Neal, Minkah Fitzpatrick, and DeMonte Casey get some run in this game. So it's really like everything is coming together for this week 1 game. And yeah, I'm amped up for it.
Yeah, man, as you should be. I mean, it's just, oh man, like this team is just playing so well, and TJ Watt's going to be doing that all season long. You're going to see that so often, even if, I mean, who cares if it's a second team offense? You're going to see that against the starters. He's just that good.
He's one of the few players that's like really just truly unblockable in the NFL.
Yeah, like not even 2 players, not even like double teaming him. He'll still get through somehow. But that dude's a game wrecker. And yeah, like you said, the outside linebacker group is just so good. It's arguably the strongest. I mean, I think you've been saying this. It's the strongest position group on defense, at least. But yeah,
that's gonna 100% be the lifeblood of this defense.
Yeah,
is everything. We've talked about maybe there's some issues with depth in the secondary and stuff like that, but it's going to be getting to the quarterback. I expect this group to be back up, over in the 50 to 60 sack ranges, as a collective defense this year. And it's going to be built off getting pressure on the opposing quarterback. So, it was great to see TJ Watt get involved in the action there. And, obviously we've talked about what the rookie Herbig has done on the outside, getting to the quarterback as well this preseason. So, my last takeaway from this game too, and really just the preseason and training camp in general, dude, there's really no significant injuries on this team whatsoever. I mean, Larry Ogunjobi hasn't played in the preseason at all. He's actually played less than he played last year in the preseason and training camp. So, that's it. They held out Cameron Hayward from playing in this game, but again, he should be good to go week 1. So overall, this team is incredibly healthy. No significant injuries. The only real one was Corey Trice, who was the rookie 7th round pick that tore his ACL. But outside of that, there's really been nothing that you're, oh my gosh, this is such a crazy injury. How's it going to impact the season? The Steelers have been really healthy, and they've been able to play their starters and play their first team, and that's going to bode well for them going forward.
Yeah, I mean, the best ability is availability, as the saying goes. But yeah, that's really that's great for the Steelers. I mean, you need all hands on deck, really. I mean, just the fortune of not having injuries, at least, I mean, that one minor one, but like still, when you have all your starters healthy going into week 1, that's a pretty good thing and pretty good feeling. So, I mean, it just full blown, you're going right into it with everyone starting, everyone contributing. So, I mean, yeah, that's huge for the Steelers.
Yeah, man, it's go time for this Pittsburgh team now. But let's flip it over to the Eagles. If you have any takeaways from their final preseason game as well, let's get them out here. Let's discuss them.
I feel like mine just get repetitive because the starters never play. So
Yeah.
it's just
It's the
going
complete
back.
opposite of what the Steelers do, you know?
Yeah, literally. It's just like the starters hardly saw any snaps. Jalen Hurts didn't see any snaps. Like, I mean, it's you're really kind of just relying on some of the smaller things that you pay attention to. And I guess one of those things is, as we've been talking about, the quarterback, the backup quarterback position. I mean, I feel like the talk of Mariota getting cut is just heating up. It's been heating up a lot recently. But I know you asked me this question last week if I'd be okay with Tanner McKee being that second quarterback.
Yeah.
I the more I think about it, I'm like, nah. We need if we're gonna cut Mariota, we have to bring in someone else, like another veteran, someone who can actually throw a ball, as opposed to Mariota, who just, as I've been saying, has been kind of just atrocious.
Yeah.
There's no other way to put it, really. Although he did have one like nice completion in, I think, the one drive he had. He was on the run. I feel like that's his kind of his best. He's at his best when he's on the move.
Yeah.
But again, it's been so underwhelming for him. Tanner McKee again. I feel like he also closed the gap a bit more on that second quarterback position. So
Yeah.
it's yeah. I know we're gonna get into the roster breakdown, but it's just I hate that I keep going back to the same exact storyline because it is that it's so important to have like a solid quality backup in case something happens to Jalen Hurts. I mean, any team
100%.
needs that. So yeah, it's just I need to keep emphasizing that because it's such an issue right now.
One of the biggest indicators on how legitimate, a team has for championship aspirations, I think, is the quality of their backup quarterback. And, we talked about this last week. It is a little bit of a broken record. We both thought, when they brought in Marcus Mariota, it was going to be an upgrade over Gardner Minshew, but it just hasn't been. I mean, I had Josh Dobbs on my radar a little bit as a guy that maybe the Eagles could have brought in if he was cut by the Browns, but
Yeah,
obviously now he just got traded to the Cardinals, so that's off the table. But I think something along the lines of that is what the Eagles are going to have to look into once these roster cuts come down around the NFL, to just bring in somebody that can be an upgrade over Mariota. Because, like you've talked about, if it's as bad as it really seems, I mean, it's like you're going to want something more than what you have right there in rookie Tanner McKee, late round draft pick, and Marcus Mariota, who's really struggled this preseason. So,
yeah.
um, I hear you. It's definitely not, something to take lightly. I mean, we saw Gardner Minshew have to come in and play a couple games for the Eagles last year. Like it's totally on the table that there could be, a situation like that arises again.
Yeah, I mean, I hope not, but it's really something that I'm going to be paying attention to a lot in the coming days. When I mean, the deadline's what, in 2 days, so for roster
Yeah.
cut downs. So I mean,
Yeah.
that's going to be my main focus. But I guess my other takeaway, which I don't know how concerning this really is, because again, the starters haven't really been playing. It's just some of the miscommunications on defense, and a part of me sort of thinks back to last year. Sort of this rust factor, but again, it's kind of hard to gauge when it's not the starters playing. But still, I mean, it's Sean Desai, new defensive coordinator, as we know. But even there was one specific play. I'm pretty sure it was one of our safeties and a linebacker who followed. They both followed one player, and then the running back was wide open in the end zone. There have been a couple of those plays throughout preseason, but I'm not sure if those are like that overly concerning, because again, they are backups and sort of fighting for the roster. And as long as this doesn't spill over into the regular season with the starters, then it shouldn't. Then I think it'll be okay. But it's certainly something to keep an eye on, because obviously with a new defensive coordinator, you got to learn the scheme and sort of a different kind of style from Jonathan Gannon for some of those players who are coming back, who were with the team last year on the Super Bowl run. So that'll be something I'll be paying attention to. It's not, I'm not overly concerned about it yet, but if it's like glaring, if it becomes a glaring issue, then yeah, then something's gonna have to be done about that. But
Well, that was something that we talked about a lot last year, and the Eagles just got off to such a good start that it kind of just went away on its own.
yeah,
And you're right. We really haven't brought that up at all to this point. Is how rust could potentially play a factor, and like you said, the starters haven't really been playing, and it's obviously Sirianni runs a little bit of a lighter training camp as far as contact and padded practices go and everything like that. So, it is something that I don't think we can just kind of put it to the wayside. It's something that, I think definitely has to stay on the radar as we look and analyze, how this team does in the early weeks.
Yeah. So I mean, right now, well, I'll be a bit like calm about it, but yeah, like I said, if this continues to be an issue even with the starters, then that's when the alarm bells will start sounding, will start ringing. But
Yeah.
that's those are really my two takeaways from I guess the entirety of preseason, really, because they've been the same two kind of headlines, or at least the quarterback position, for a while now. And I'll say one of my standouts was Ben Van Simmerman, who I don't think is going to make the roster. I mean, I'm already spoiling that. It's not really a spoiler, but he had 17 tackles and 11 of them were solo, which is crazy. But I just figured I'd give him some love because he played so well. But yeah, no,
Oh yeah.
let's not stock up for sure on that one.
Well, let's get right into it. I mean, did you have anybody else for stock up, or was it just Ben Van Summer?
Literally, it was just him because he's the only one who like actually stood out in a good way. But
all right, well,
it's not really. I feel like stock down at this point is kind of doesn't make sense because those players that I think are stock down aren't going to make the team, and we're going to get to that. So
which is valid. Yeah, I mean, I'll give mine real quick because I know we want to get into this roster projection, but one guy who my stock up is on is Anthony McFarland, third string running back. In this game, he had what was it here? He rushed 10 times for 55 yards and he had a touchdown. I mean, that's something where, like, when you're fighting for a final roster spot, having a big preseason finale like that goes a long way. There's not much. There wasn't a lot of competition in that running back room. I think it was more competition from roster cut downs. If, there's a guy that the Steelers have on their radar that got, cut and they wanted to bring in. The thing is, McFarland doesn't really add much special teams ability, which, the Steelers like in that third string running back.
Mm-hmm.
But he did a lot in this game to kind of boost his stock. And we'll get into it when we get into the 53-man roster projection, whether or not I think he's going to make the roster. But as for stock down, man, I mean, he was my stock down 2 weeks ago. Kevin Dotson, dude. I mean, it's like he hasn't done a lot to stick out, really hasn't given any competition to have, meaningful reps and really challenge any of these guards, say Malu, Daniels, even Herbig, who's been injured. And he didn't play in the preseason finale because, he was nursing an injury. Mm-hmm. And I just don't see a lot of value that he brings to this roster right now. So his stock is a little bit down for me. And another guy that, his stock is down is Zach Gentry, the tight end. I mean, Darnell Washington, the rookie that Pittsburgh drafted out of Georgia, man, he's starting to get some first-team reps. He's a better blocker already than Zach Gentry is. And, Gentry doesn't really add a lot to this roster. So, he's another guy that really hasn't stuck out at all in the preseason. His training camp has been lackluster. So his stock is a little bit down for me. And we'll get into it whether or not I see these guys making the roster. But Kevin Dotson, Zach Gentry, stock down a little bit. It's just been underwhelming so far to this point. And I'm disappointed that I haven't seen more from these guys, because both of them, if you had asked me at the start of training camp, I would have said, oh, yeah, both of these guys are definitely making the roster.
Yeah, I mean, seeing that, it's definitely disappointing for sure. But I mean, even if they were going to be just backups, but I mean, we're already there, man. We should just dive into it, because
let's dive into it.
Yeah, let's just do it, man, because we're already there.
All right, so I think we should just go. I think we should just go position by position.
Yeah,
with each team. Yeah. All right. So let's start with QB on the offense.
Okay. Do we want to start Eagles or Steelers?
Let's do Steelers, because I think it's pretty clear cut.
Yeah.
The Steelers have 4 QBs. The 3 that they're keeping is going to be Kenny Pickett, obviously. Trubisky's going to be the backup, and Mason Rudolph is going to be the third stringer. Probably not dressing for most of these. Oh, actually, no, there is that new rule in the NFL this year now. I forgot, where I think if you keep 3 quarterbacks, you have to have all 3 of them dressed. So
yeah,
he will, but that's besides the point. It's going to be those 3 guys. That's the trio of quarterbacks, and yeah. I mean, I think it's as clear cut as that. And obviously, we've been talking about it a little bit, but for the Eagles, it's a little bit more messy. So let's dive into it.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm just going to compare last year and sort of last year the Eagles carried two quarterbacks at least going into the season, and then they ended up bringing in Ian Book, who I think is actually going to get cut, which isn't all that surprising, honestly. But
Yeah,
I think they are.
I think I actually read that he already got waived or something.
Yeah,
like
he
that.
did. He did get waived. That's what I was. Yeah, I was going to say that right after. Actually, I was like, wait, he did yesterday, or earlier this morning. But yeah, so Jalen Hurts obviously is QB1. There's really no question about that. And QB2, I have to put Mariota. I just have to, because we gave him this money. And even if we were to cut him, it'd be 1.6 million in dead cap, which isn't a lot necessarily, but it's also not like, ideal, if that makes sense. So I feel like you have to keep him. He's been in the league for a while. I hate that I'm defending this because I think it's going to happen. I think that they're going to keep him. And if they, let's say hypothetically, they don't keep him, then they're going to do what I was saying. They're going to bring in a different quarterback. But Tanner McKee is definitely making the roster. And he'll be the third QB regardless of whatever scenario plays out. I just don't see how McKee will be the second quarterback. And financially, I think it probably makes more sense to keep Mariota, but that really hasn't ever stopped Howie Roseman from cutting someone, really, or trading someone.
What do you think is more likely, Mariota making the roster or them bringing in somebody else and cutting Mariota?
Man, see, I've been going back and forth with this, and I just, for some reason, my gut's telling me they're going to keep him.
Okay.
And that's, if they do, so be it. If they don't, then I think it's more likely they're going to keep him. I mean, they brought him in with the expectations that, like we said, that he would be a capable backup, sort of run the offense similarly to Jalen Hurts. It wouldn't be that significant a drop off. Maybe there's still that hope there. I'm not sure after this preseason, after all this training camp, but I think.
I mean, dude, you just wanted him to be on the level he was, even if he was just on the level he was with the Raiders when he was backing up Derek Carr. I mean, that's all you really need to ask for from him, but it's just been such an underwhelming preseason.
Yeah, that's to say the least. Yeah, very underwhelming. But I think, it's going to be those three: Hurts, Mariota, and McKee as the three QBs on the roster.
All right, sounds good. So let's move on to running back now. I have the Steelers keeping three running backs. Najee Harris and Jalen Warren are the two obvious ones. And I do think that Anthony, if you had asked me at the start of training camp whether Anthony McFarland was going to be on this roster, I would have said no. But he's done enough through training camp. He's had a very good training camp. He's had a good preseason. And he really stamped his spot, I think, in this preseason finale. I mean, if you have an injury to, either Najee or Warren, you're going to want somebody with some experience, somebody who knows the system, coming in there. And even though he doesn't add a ton of value on special teams, I think Jalen Warren's ability as a third running back, and also the fact that, he has been returning kicks. So even though he doesn't do a lot, he is going to be the kick returner. He doesn't return punts, but at least kick returners on kickoffs. It seems like he'll be the guy back there. So I have him making the roster as the third running back.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not that surprised by that. I'm actually more surprised you thought he wasn't going to make the roster than
I really did. I mean, last year they kept Benny Snell as the third running back, and I think he actually got signed by the Lions or something like that. But I was in the camp for a long time that they were going to cut McFarland and bring in somebody after roster cuts who add some. I know Alex Kozora, who's a Steelers writer, was throwing around the idea if Trey Sermon gets cut by the Eagles, that's a guy that the Steelers could potentially look at. They liked him coming out of Ohio State. He had some value on special teams and a third running back, but I really think McFarland's done enough to earn a roster spot at this point. But I would have thought more it was along the lines of somebody like a Benny Snell who can be a third running back and also add special teams value. But I think McFarland's done enough to stick around.
Yeah, that's totally valid then. But I don't really have much else to add there. I mean, those are the three I also expected to be on the roster. So move on to the Eagles then.
Yeah, what do you think on this Eagles running back room? Because it's definitely a bit more complicated, a bit more loaded than the Steelers.
Also chaotic, sort of like the backup quarterback position. But so I think DeAndre Swift is going to be leading at least to start the season, they'd be running back one. But I still think it's going to be more of a committee than and definitely way more than last year. If you even want to consider last year a committee, but that was more Miles Sanders led.
Yeah.
So DeAndre Swift, running back one. Kenneth Gainwell, I mean, he had a really good postseason. You can't cut him, and he's shown flashes of potentially being that running back one. So maybe he could take over for DeAndre Swift down the line, but he's definitely making the roster. Boston Scott, I mean, we gave him an extension in this offseason, so I mean, we're gonna keep him the Giants killer, as most people know him as. So he's not going anywhere, I don't think. And then the fourth one, I think they're going to have four running backs. They're going to have to carry four. And even if they have one, they scratch one on game day, I still think they're going to carry four. Last year they had three, but because it's not as like straightforward as to who the running back is and sort of how the snaps will be divided between them, I think they're going to keep four. Rashad Penny, I think, is going to be that fourth one just because he's been showing that burst that he had like pre-injury. So yeah. It's difficult. This is really difficult, this last one. Just cutting Trey Sermon. I think it's not that he hasn't done enough necessarily to be on the roster. It's just I think the other running backs are just a little better. And that's really not on Trey Sermon.
It comes down to a numbers game at one point, you know? It sucks, but the Eagles are going to go committee this year at running back, and it's like he's just the odd man out.
Yeah, it's a very crowded room. So, I mean, somebody has to be out. It has to be cut from that. So, I think it's going to be Trey Sermon who will be cut or waived. Yeah.
I think I'm in agreement with you. I think it's just, you know, you brought in Rashad Penny, you brought in DeAndre Swift, you re-signed, you know, Boston Scott. Obviously, Kenny Gainwell has value. It's like it just makes sense that Trey Sermon's the guy that goes. You know, if they can usually sign him to the practice squad, great. But I mean, I think there's going to be a market for him too on the open market if he gets cut. That he may be, you know, in a different uniform. So that's the running back room. Let's go to wide receiver now. For the Steelers, the first four I think are locked in stone for the most part. Deontay Johnson, George Pickens, Allen Robinson, and Calvin Austin, all for sure locks. I definitely think Miles Boykin is making the roster because of his special teams ability as a gunner on the punt team. So I think that's it. I think we're getting 5 wide receivers, and that's it. With the fact that, you know, I have them keeping McFarland. We'll get into the tight ends in a little bit. I have them keeping 5 wide receivers. Some of the notables that they're going to be cutting. Gunnar Olszewski, I mean, I just don't see where he adds value to this team straight up. I mean, he's not going to be returning punts. He's not going to be returning kicks. You know, he's a mediocre at best wide receiver. And I think that they're better off with, you know, guys like Des Fitzpatrick or Aaron Cruikshank on their practice squad in case, you know, they need to sign somebody due to injury or something like that. But I think Gunner's the odd man out here. I just don't see the value in keeping a 6th wide receiver for this team.
Yeah, that's interesting because I actually had Gunnar Olszewski as the 6th wide receiver. But, I mean, the only discrepancy really we've had so far. I mean, I get the argument. I don't know. I feel like Miles Boykin's been he's had a kind of quiet training camp, but not like quiet it hasn't been bad is what I'm trying to say. It's just been I feel like maybe a 6th receiver would have, but I mean, based off your argument, I can understand why he might not potentially make the roster then.
Last year they kept 6 receivers from the jump, and Gunnar Olszewski was that punt returner to start the season. He ultimately lost the job to, I believe it was Steve Sims who took over. He signed with the Texans in the offseason, but you know, it's like Calvin Austin's fielding punts. Anthony McFarland is the kick returner. If I have, you know, McFarland making the roster, I just don't see where Gunnar Olszewski fits into this. I think he's the odd man out in this wide receiver room because I see them keeping other players at different positions. I mean, at the very least, he wouldn't dress if he made the roster. So I really just don't see the value in adding him here. I do think Miles Boykin is going to make it because he is such a prolific special teams player
Right.
for this roster. Yeah.
Yeah. That's totally valid then.
All right, let's talk Eagles wide receivers now.
Okay. I mean, I feel like sort of similar to you, like the first two at least are set in stone. AJ Brown, Devontae Smith. There's really no question there on 1A and 1B there.
Yeah.
But then after that, it gets a little iffy. But I do think the Eagles are going to stick with Quez Watkins as wide receiver 3. I know he's been nursing a hamstring injury, but still he's had a really good training camp, similar to last year. Just hoping he can sort of get back to that training camp form and carry it over into the regular season. And I think they are going to keep Olamide Zaccheaus. I mean, they signed him, and he's more of a slot guy, but he's been. I like. I mean, he's pretty fast. Also, sort of not quite like Quez Watkins, but I feel like he's definitely more suited as the slot receiver kind of role. So that one, I mean, those four, I feel like weren't that surprising. And then I have 5 receivers also. The last one I have is Britton Covey. I do think they're going to keep him. I just because the other ones, I mean, some have already been waived. Deion Kane, Greg Ward's probably not making it.
I was going to ask you about Greg Ward if you saw a potential avenue for him to make this roster.
No, it's just I think Britton Covey probably adds more in terms of special teams. And I mean, want to talk about Devin Allen. Yeah, he had that one like really long kick return to start the game, but I don't. He probably will end up being a practice squad guy again, and I just think Britton Covey, he's had experience with this team, and I feel like he's still a solid 5th receiver. I've always liked him coming out of the slot, so I do think they're going to keep him over. I think he adds more as a pass catcher, and I mean he's also played special teams. He's returned punts and kicks, so I mean there's also that value to it. So that's
he's got some versatility for sure. I mean, I think it's definitely an interesting group. I mean, do you like this wide receiver group more than what you had last year? At this point, I mean, obviously AJ Brown, Devontae Smith are still the mainstays there, but versus what it was coming out of camp last year. How's your confidence level in this group?
I mean, I think Zaccheaus is a little better than Zach Pascal. So in that sense, I think it's better. And then Britton Covey, I'm pretty sure, is also on the roster last year. So really, it's not all that different. So I feel like a little more confident. Well, actually, probably way more confident because of the season that AJ Brown, both of them had, AJ Brown, Devontae Smith. So yeah.
And I feel like we could even see a jump, even from how good Devontae Smith was last year. We could still see even more of a jump from him this upcoming year.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah. All right, so let's go over to tight ends now. So Pat Freiermuth for the Steelers, mainstay, tight end number 1, no doubt about it. Yeah. Darnell Washington, the draft pick for the Steelers, he's making the roster at this point. He's looked very good in the preseason. Connor Hayward, brother Cam Hayward, he's super versatile. You can line him up. He's gotten snaps at running back. He may get some play at fullback because the Steelers don't have a traditional fullback on the roster, and also add some tight end versatility. And I do have them keeping Zach Gentry as a 4th tight end. So where I have them only keeping 5 wide receivers, it makes up a spot. Zach Gentry, when I was writing this whole thing out, he was the last name. He was the last name on this 53 projection for me. So again, I mean, he doesn't add a lot of versatility, but it's the fact that he's been with this team for a couple of years now. They re-signed him in the offseason. He's probably not going to dress on game day, but if somebody gets hurt in this tight end room, you know what you have with him. You can call upon him to kind of step in any role that you need. So I have him sticking around as the 4th tight end.
Yeah, I also had the same exact 4 players that you did on that. So, I mean, I think it makes sense. I mean,
it's hard for me to see a tight end room without Zach Gentry in it, just given how the rest of it lines up. I mean, who knows if Darnell Washington starts to struggle a little bit.
Yeah.
If Pat Freiermuth gets injured, all of a sudden this room becomes very thin at tight end. So I just think it makes sense to keep him around, at least to start the season. And if Darnell Washington comes along, quicker than I guess maybe you would expect for a 4th round pick or a 3rd round pick, as a rookie, then maybe Zach Gentry becomes even more expendable. But right now I think he's got to be on this 53.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I mean, just give us some time for Washington, and like you said, if he develops quicker, then that's great. I mean, then then maybe Zach Gentry is expendable, but for now, I think that makes sense. I think that's a good choice.
And the other tight end that's on the roster is Rodney Williams, and I imagine he's probably going to be a practice squad guy, but he's also shown flashes of having some potential. If this room gets thin in a hurry, you could call upon him if the Steelers can retain him on the practice squad. So that's how that room shakes out. The Eagles, why don't you discuss that tight end room and what do you see happening there?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's going to be the same exact one as last year, I think. Dallas Goedert.
We've discussed this a little bit in previous episodes, too.
Yeah, so it's going to be Dallas Goedert. I mean, one of the best tight ends in the league. Just hoping he can stay healthy the entire season. But Jack Stoll is the backup, I've touched on this so many times. I feel like just he's more of a blocking tight end, which is great and all for the run game. But Grant Calcaterra is sort of the counter to that, sort of more of the pass catcher as opposed to the run blocker. So those three, I feel like are going to make it. I believe it was who got cut. The tight end. I just had it here. Dan Arnold got cut. Tyree Jackson waived. Tyree Jackson might be someone we bring back on the practice squad potentially. But other than that, the other ones aren't that surprising. Dan Arnold didn't really show much in training camp or preseason. So, I mean, there's not really much else to add on those three.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty obvious room. So, we could just leave it at that. Let's get into the offensive line a little bit now as we close off the offense. All right, stick with me here. So I had the Steelers. I think they're going to have 9 offensive linemen on the roster. When it comes to tackles, I think it's going to be Chukwuma Okorafor, Dan Moore Jr., Broderick Jones are the 3 guys. Mm-hmm. As far as the interior offensive line goes, it's going to be Mason Cole, Isaac Seumalo, and James Daniels as the starters on the interior.
Yeah,
I think Herbig is going to be the backup, and then also Spencer Anderson, super versatile guy. He's played tackle, he's played guard, he's taken a couple snaps at center in this preseason. I think they're going to keep him on the 53 as well. That gets us to 8. Mm-hmm. I see them not cutting Kevin Dotson. I think they're going to try and trade him initially, Kevin Dotson. Okay. Now, a big factor of this is Herbig has been injured in dealing with a shoulder injury, I believe, for a decent chunk of he didn't play in the last preseason game. If he's not fully healthy and he has to start the year injured, I see them keeping Kevin Dotson. If not, I think they're going to try and find a trade for him. But the thing is, the Steelers don't really have a backup center right now. It's like Herbig's only taken 9 snaps this preseason at center. I think Spencer Anderson's taken 3 or something like that. So, there's also a stat that's floating out around there that the Steelers, the past 10 years or something like that, have always brought someone in cuts from another roster to be on their 53 that wasn't a part of training camp of the preseason. I see them going out and finding, potentially a backup center with some experience to be on the interior there, as long as Herbig is healthy to be kind of that swing guard. And I think Kevin Dotson is the odd man out there. So that's kind of the 9 that I see. So even though I don't have a name, I think there's going to be some center from another roster that they're going to bring in to be that 9th offensive lineman.
Yeah, I was going to say there's where's the backup center there, but I mean you just covered it. So I mean I think that makes sense. I also had 9 offensive linemen. I think they also did that last year. They had 9 exactly.
I mean, I just don't see. Kendrick Green is the interesting one because he's obviously started at center for them in the past. He actually started at guard in this final preseason game because Herbig and Dotson and Daniels, none of them played. But I just think Kendrick Green's time is up. I mean, I don't know how you can confidently have him as your backup center on a team that's really looking to progress and, that's so focused on running the ball. And obviously you want to protect Kenny Pickett and everything like that. I just don't see any value that Kendrick Green brings to this roster. I think he's cut, and I think they go and they look for, someone in another organization that potentially gets cut down to be the backup center that's got some legitimate experience playing the position.
Yeah, that's valid. I mean, the only name that I had different here was the Raven Clark, potentially just because he could play both tackle positions, but I'm not sure that's
I mean, he's had an underwhelming training camp, underwhelming preseason. Yeah. I just think you're better off keeping Spencer Anderson, who's, got more kind of, I guess, upside versatility. And if anything happens to one of the tackles, you just insert Broderick Jones in there and you're just off to the races with the rookie first rounder. So, That's how I see it shaking down. But yeah, I don't see LaRaven Clark making it either.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah,
so that's how I see the O line shaking out. Talk to me about the Eagles O line.
yeah. So also, I have them carrying 9 offensive
Okay.
linemen. I mean, the starting five is pretty straightforward. Jordan Mailata, Landon Dickerson at left guard, Jason Kelsey at center. Cam Jurgens has earned that starting position at right guard. So Blaine Johnson at right tackle. I mean, that's a pretty damn good group.
Yeah, no
But
doubt.
yeah, the one surprise I have here, it's not really much of a surprise now, but I wasn't expecting Fred Johnson to make the roster. Initially, I didn't have him on it, but then the Eagles gave him a 2-year extension. So I was like, well, they're obviously going to keep him now. So the question was, who are they going to leave out? And well, it turns out it's Dennis Kelly, who I thought potentially could make the roster, but clearly not. I mean, I thought he added versatility on the offensive line, but I mean, he's also a veteran. He's been in the league for a while, and and the Eagles are betting on Fred Johnson's upside, really, which is totally valid considering who you have as your offensive line coach. And then the other 3, Sua Peta, Tyler Steen, the rookie we drafted this year, Jack Driscoll. I mean, that's pretty similar to last year. Sua Peta was there last year. Same with Driscoll. So that's and who was I going to say? I mean, if something were to happen to Jason Kelsey, you could just slide Cam Jurgens to the center, then play. I mean, if you want Tyler Steen or Sua Peta, it's really up to the Eagles then. So I'm not concerned about the backup center position because Cam Jurgens is that's his natural position. So.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you about is if something happened to Kelsey, what do you see as the most likely scenario? I think everything you laid out right there makes sense. I was going to ask you if maybe you see Julian Good-Jones making it all, but
he might be practice squad, but I just don't think he'll make the roster.
Yeah. Versus, potentially then, whose spot would he be taking if he were to make the roster, if you had it at 9? You said Fred Johnson's locked in. You're not cutting Tyler Steen, who you just drafted.
Yeah, exactly.
So then it would ultimately be Opeta or Jack Driscoll. That would be the odd man out, but it just makes sense for Good-Jones.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's not really that difficult of a prediction to make. I mean, I'd be surprised if it wasn't these 9, but
yeah. That's
so,
all right, so what'd you have total for the offense? I had 24 players on offense for the Steelers.
I also had 24. So
yeah, and I think it was actually we both had 9 offensive linemen. We both had 3 quarterbacks. You had 4 running backs, whereas I had 4 tight ends.
Yeah,
and then we had 5 wide receivers. So
so all right, that math checks out to me.
Laid it out pretty good there. All right, let's go over to the defense now. And you want to start? Let's start on let's start in the trenches. I'll start with the defensive line for the Steelers. I see them keeping 7 D linemen. It's a tough group. Tomlin's talked about it. The D-line coaches talked about it. Like the Steelers have a lot of talented guys who probably deserve to be on 53-man rosters, but somebody's going to get cut on the Steelers D-line where it's going to be like, man, that hurts to lose them a little bit. So defensively at this position, I have them keeping Cameron Hayward's obvious, Larry Ogunjobi's obvious, DeMarvin Leal, who they drafted last year, I think is making this roster, and then Keanu Benton, 2nd-round pick, that's 4.
Yeah.
Then it gets into the territory of you have to then keep 3 of Armand Watts, Braden Fajoko, Isaiah Loudermilk, and Montravius Adams. I see them keeping Montravius Adams because Keanu Benton, even though he's looked really good in this preseason, Montravius Adams has been running with the first team. He was the starting, nose tackle last year. I think he just adds a lot of value to stay on this roster. I also think that Armand Watts is going to stick around because he's versatile. He can line up as a D end. He can line up as a nose tackle in an emergency situation. So then to me, it comes down to Braden Fajoko or Isaiah Loudermilk. And I mean, dude, honestly, I just think that it's Isaiah Loudermilk, it's run its course at this point of what he offers this team. It's like I'm just kind of like, the development hasn't come there. You've seen flashes of what he could potentially bring, but it's like, I think the Steelers are better off with a guy like, Armand Watts or DeMarvin Leal, and Braden Fajoko, I think, just adds a dimension to stop the run. In an AFC North division that is going to feature Nick Chubb and, obviously the running attack of the Baltimore Ravens with J.K. Dobbins, and then obviously what Lamar Jackson brings at the QB position, and Joe Mixon and Cincinnati as well. Like, you want a guy who's, really going to be a run stopper there in Braden Fajoko. So I see them keeping him, and maybe you can re-sign Isaiah Loudermilk to the practice squad potentially. But I just think I just don't see the value that Loudermilk really brings to this roster at this point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I actually had him on the roster, and I cut Montravius Adams, but
interesting. And you know what? It could be possible, but for me, it was just like I can't bring myself to cut Montravius Adams at this point. Like, just the starting experience that he has. He's been running with the first team in training camp. He looked good in the preseason finale. I just have him making the roster, and I even think he's going to dress still too.
Oh, I mean, that's totally valid, because I thought you said at some point earlier, maybe this was like early training camp, that he might not make the roster, or at least it was like sort of leaning that way. But I mean, considering the preseason he had, like, which was pretty solid, then I mean, that logic makes sense for him.
I mean, if they cut Montravius Adams, then you're looking at, okay, it's Braden Fajoko behind Keanu Benton, who really is a one-trick pony at this point. He stops the run, and that's about it. And Armand Watts, who, he's more of a defensive end. In an emergency, you can line him up at nose tackle, but that's definitely not ideal. So I have them keeping Adams at this point, because Loudermilk, I mean, he's a backup defensive end who's really, I mean, he's not going to dress. He'll be playing behind Hayward, Ogunjobi, Leal, and Watts. I just think that he adds less value than what Montravius Adams and Braden Fajoko have.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense then. Yeah. Back that. But
we will see if anything. If Adams gets cut, I'll be a little bit surprised, and we can react to that. But that's how I see it shaking out right now. And the indication for me is that Fajoko is going to stay around, but I think it really, at the end of the day, comes down to Fajoko or Loudermilk.
Yeah, that's valid.
So what do you have on the interior defensive line for the Eagles?
So it's certainly looking different, a little bit more different than last year. Obviously, the biggest loss being Javon Hargrave, who's not there anymore, went to the Niners, signed with them. Whatever, that's a whole different story. But so Fletcher Cox is going to be starting, obviously. I mean, at least to start, he will be. And then, last year, first round pick Jordan Davis will probably be starting alongside him again, at least to start. But that's not really a surprise. I mean, he's a first round pick. He's obviously going to make the roster because he looked solid before his injury last year. Jalen Carter, our first round pick this year, is definitely making the roster after the few glimpses we saw of when he actually was on the field in preseason. So I'm really excited to see him finally play an actual regular season game. That's going to be fun to watch. Then Milton Williams, who's been with this team for the last few years, and he's always been a solid third or more of a fourth guy in the defensive tackle rotation. And the Eagles typically keep six. So I'm going to be sticking with that too. Moro Ajomo, I think they're going to keep. He's been showing promise, and I know he got injured, so there might be the chance that they keep him on the roster, they put him on IR, so he can recover from his neck / concussion injury, so that he suffered in the second preseason game. And I think they're going to keep Kentavious Street, but in the event that
your boy Marlon, dude, you're cutting your boy Marlon.
I know, I am. I just think Kentavious Street's a bit more. I feel like he's just more of a solid player all around. I mean, I'll be honest, neither player really is super versatile, but it's still I just think Kentavious Street's been a little better in this preseason. And I mean, from what I've been seeing from Marlon, it's just he's also been kind of quiet, but I don't know. Maybe it's definitely between them two. It's one of them two who's going to make it. But But this is what I think is going to happen if they put Moro Ajomo on IR. They're gonna sign or like bring Marlon back into the squad, and
Yeah,
so
yeah,
it's real. I mean, the others don't really matter. I mean, they're not really surprising. But
yeah.
it's going to be six regardless, and it's going to be one of those two being cut. I would be surprised if Moro Ajomo was cut, honestly, but yeah,
Yeah.
I just think that's how it's going to shake out.
No, I think all that is very valid. Marlon, I definitely had written in for the Eagles roster, but like you said, I mean, if it just comes down to Ajomo's healthy and they like what they have in him and Contavious Street, again, it just becomes a numbers game. You got to get down to the 53. So
Yeah,
we will see how that shakes out. We will go to the edge rushers now. For the Steelers, I think this group is as clear as it's been in a long time. TJ Watt, Alex Highsmith, Nick Herbig, and Marcus Golden. Pretty straightforward there. That it's going to be those four guys. Herbig is obviously flashed in preseason. Marcus Golden, that experience. A guy who's had double-digit sacks in the past is arguably your fourth outside linebacker here.
Yeah.
And then obviously the duo of Highsmith and TJ Watt. This is as good a group as the Steelers have had in a long time. I mean, they had, Highsmith's rookie year, they had TJ Watt, Bud Dupree, Highsmith, and, whoever the fourth was back then. I mean, this group, I think you could make the case, has the potential to be even better. So I'm really excited, and I think it's pretty clear cut what you're going to get from there's going to be no surprises with this group before.
Yeah, I mean, that group is going to rack up so many sacks. That's going to be, I mean, good luck to any offense that's playing against. So that offensive line is going to be overwhelming.
Yeah, this is what I said, man. I'm expecting 50 to 60 sacks from this group again. I think TJ Watt is going to be up there leading the league in sacks, could potentially have 15 to 20 himself. I'm really amped up to see this group just rotate and everybody get opportunities and, just get to the quarterback, bring these guys down, I'm excited for it. So I mean, I don't think there's really even much to add on it. I think that's pretty clear cut. The quartet of outside linebackers.
Yeah, that's pretty straightforward, really.
Yeah.
So should we move on to the Eagles? I guess.
Yeah, go ahead with the Eagles. I mean, I think for the Steelers, it's pretty clear cut at this point.
Yeah. I mean, I think the Eagles is pretty clear cut too. I mean, the most obvious has to be Hassan Reddick. The dude, I mean, had such a good season, 19 and a half sacks total if you include the playoffs. So he's going to be leading the way. And then on the opposite side will be Josh Sweat, who I still think is really underrated, but he had double-digit sacks last season too. So that's going to be, I mean, a great duo there coming off the edge. But, I mean, Brandon Graham, old reliable. He'll be there coming off the bench, sort of that rotation. A lot of rotation with the defensive line. It's just that's just how the Eagles do it. But
that's the best way to do it. All the best teams rotate their pass.
A lot of it, like it's just constant. Then Nolan Smith definitely going to be behind Hassan Reddick, our rookie, second first round pick this year, which is still crazy to me that we even had to in the first place. But that he probably won't see the field too much. I mean, Hassan Reddick hardly ever comes off the field, but maybe it'll be opposite of him and just rotational like pass situations. But I mean, Nolan Smith, I mean, I'm excited for him too. And then Patrick Johnson, who's been with the team for a few years now, and he's been more of a special teams player. So that's kind of why I have him on the roster. And I kind of have to put Derek Barnett in here, as much as it annoys me. But I mean, if you cut him now, it's a $5.5 million cap hit, so financially it makes no sense. It's a $5.5 million cap hit, but it's 12.7 in dead cap. So there's really no need to. It doesn't make sense to cut him. You're gonna keep those six really, and I'm just hoping that he doesn't commit dumb penalties like he always has. But you never know. If he can just avoid those and be somewhat competent, then that's fine. But he's more of that sort of sixth guy in the rotation. But it's going to be those six, and
so you see Kieran Johnson and Taron Jackson. They're both the odd men out here.
I think Taron Jackson got cut earlier.
Oh, he did already? Okay, I didn't
I
see that.
think he did, but if he didn't, I think he still is.
Yeah.
And Kyron Johnson, yeah, I think his time's up. Again, more of a special teamer too, and doesn't really add much on defense. So it's yeah, I'm gonna stick with those
Yeah.
six.
No, all valid. I mean, I have Derek Barnett's name kind of in pen at this point for making the Eagles roster. So
Unfortunate, yeah, but
yeah,
just how it is.
yeah, yeah. All right, so we will go to inside linebacker now. For the Steelers, I have them keeping 5, and I think that this is kind of shaking out. Really, I mean, I've kind of seen it go in this way for the past couple weeks now, but it's going to be Cole Holcomb, Landon Roberts, Quan Alexander has definitely done enough to be the third linebacker here. I think they're definitely keeping Mark Robinson because of his upside, and then Tanner Muse is going to be the 5th guy because of the special teams value that he brings. He's had a pretty good preseason, so I think it's going to be those 5 guys. That's going to be the casted inside linebacker. Obviously, a lot of turnover in this group from last year, but that's the 5 that I see staying around in Pittsburgh. And Nick Kwiatkowski is the kind of the first guy out here for this position group.
Yeah, and like you said, it's certainly a different kind of inside linebacker, more downhill, uh, like sure-handed, up in the box sort of thing. I mean, as opposed to
Yeah,
last year, it was like the linebackers, Miles Jack and Devin Bush, more side to side, as you said. So, I mean, I
yeah.
like this group a lot. I feel like it's a pretty solid group, and yeah, I
Yeah, this
mean,
was one of the biggest question marks coming into training camp in the preseason, and I feel like Holcomb has definitely looked the part of the 3-down linebacker. I think of Landon Roberts. I mean, his game is it bleeds Pittsburgh the way that
yeah,
he kind of gets into the backfield. I mean, tackles for loss. This guy's going to be a machine, and Quan Alexander has looked like a guy that should have been signed before the draft, not a couple weeks in the training camp. He's looked really good, and yeah, the rest of the group kind of works itself out. So,
yeah.
I think that's pretty clear cut for the inside linebacker group for Pittsburgh.
Cool. So, oh boy, now it's the position I'm most concerned about, yeah, is exactly that one, the one we were just talking about with the Steelers, inside linebacker. But yeah, man, I'm gonna say, I mean, Nakobe Dean obviously has to make the team. That's just, I mean, he's
Yeah,
the green dot. He's gonna be calling the plays. He's gonna make it. Christian Ellis, I think, is gonna make the team. I don't know if it'll necessarily be as the starter alongside Nakobe Dean. I don't think that's necessarily the case, but he can definitely come in and play a few snaps alongside him. And now the question is, who do you keep? Because I think they're only going to keep 3 inside linebackers,
wow,
at
okay,
least to start. Because like I've been saying, the Eagles really have just devalued this position. It's just, yeah, like it's the talent there isn't even there really, other than Nakobe Dean. And the other reason I have 3 is because maybe the Eagles will bring someone in, post cuts.
yeah,
And it's the third one I have. It really came down to Zach Cunningham or Nicholas Moreau, who, I mean, I don't know if you were watching that Eagles game at all, but Moreau played until pretty much the final snap of the game in in that last preseason game. So that's usually not a good sign.
no, trying to
Um,
give him every opportunity to make a case for
but
himself.
yeah, I mean, he had one good play, and one that stood out, and at least it was a stop for no gain. But it's just he hasn't done very much other than that the entirety of training camp and preseason. So I think it's going to be Zach Cunningham staying on the roster. And I know we kind of signed him late, but again, he's a veteran, and I think I would trust him more, right? I mean, just in general, as opposed to Nicholas Moreau. But
I like it, dude. I like that move, keeping Cunningham over Moreau. I just think that, I mean, Cunningham, I think there's more. I don't know if upside's the right word, but I think there's more
like,
potential for him to just kind of be the guy there,
be like a solid kind of player starting alongside Nakobe Dean is how I see it, as opposed to Moreau, who just is not really a good player. I mean, last year he was not. I mean, he was one of the worst against the pass, like in terms of passer rating allowed. I mean, he was one of the worst. So
Yeah.
really, I mean, what's the use if you're going to be that bad? I mean, he just hasn't shown anything positive, is what I'm trying to say. So I don't think he's making it. It's just that simple to me. It just hasn't played well. So
Yeah. No, all valid, all valid. So we'll go to the secondary now, and I'll start with cornerback for the Steelers. Patrick Peterson in, Levi Wallace in, Joey Porter Jr. in, all on the outside quarterbacks. I
yeah,
do have them keeping James Pierre, who again, kind of like Zach Gentry, was one of the last names I wrote in here, but
yeah,
I think he's going to make it. He's got the special teams prowess, and I'm concerned that the Steelers are maybe one injury away from him playing meaningful snaps on defense, but I think initially just what they have, he's got to be on the roster. If they can go out and find another, fourth corner after cuts to potentially bring in, I could see them doing that and cutting Pierre. But I think right now I have his name on the roster. And then in the slot corner, Elijah Riley, I've just kind of really fallen in love with his game.
yeah,
He adds that versatility because he's a really good special teamer. He can definitely play the run in the slot. And if you need him in a situation to play safety at an emergency, stance, he can do that too. So I have Elijah Riley making the roster. And Chandon Sullivan also hasn't had a bad preseason. So I have them keeping him around in the slot as well. He can play more of the kind of those pass downs, and Elijah Riley more of the run downs. So I think, the fact that they don't have, a true slot. They really haven't had a true slot corner since Mike Hilton, who could kind of do it all, an
yeah.
every down slot corner. I think it'll kind of be by committee with these two guys and Patrick Peterson, in third down situations where they go to the nickel or the dime. He'll slide in there to the slot. So that's how I see the cornerback room shaking out.
So is that 6 corners that you have?
6 corners, yeah.
Okay.
With Elijah Riley kind of being that hybrid to a certain degree.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say if you didn't include Elijah Riley, I'd be annoyed, but
No,
had a pretty good training camp.
his name is definitely in pen. Okay. I did think about maybe projecting. I almost want them to cut Chandon Sullivan. I just don't see it happening. I mean, statistically speaking, he was one of the worst corners in football last year.
Yeah.
I just think that he's looked good enough to stick on this initial 53. But again, I think this is kind of the biggest concern for Pittsburgh's roster overall is just the depth at corner. If Patrick Peterson is a step slow because of his age, and Joey Porter Jr. isn't quite there, or God forbid, there's a significant injury, it's like, you're going to have Chandon Sullivan or James Pierre playing meaningful snaps. So this is definitely another position I could see the team potentially adding after roster cuts.
That makes
kind
sense.
of in the light that you just talked about, inside linebacker for the Eagles.
Yeah, that's totally valid. I think that makes a lot of sense if they add someone else after cuts. But moving on to the Eagles. The obvious one's Darius Slay. He's going to be on outside corner. Really doesn't matter. I mean, it's him, James Bradbury, both on the outside. Hopefully they don't slow down because of their age. Obviously, past 30 at this point. They're not getting any younger. Hopefully, Darius Slay doesn't lose any. I mean, I'm more worried about him potentially losing, at least like slowing down a little bit. But Avonte Maddox in the slot again. I really hope he stays healthy because when he is, he's so fun to watch. He's one of the best slot corners in the league. And then after that, I mean, the other two, I mean, kind of locks to make the roster. Josh Jobe and Josiah Scott. I mean, they've been with the team last year they're on the team, and Josiah Scott actually played in 16 games, started 4. I think he started in place of Avonte Maddox when he was injured. So he'll definitely be there. Keely Ringo obviously has to make the roster. And then I have 7 cornerbacks, so I have one more. I know that's a lot, but I think, I mean, it makes sense when you kind of do the numbers. But the last one I have is Eli Ricks, who's had a pretty good preseason, undrafted free agent. And it's really tough, though, because I could have put Mario Goodrich and Mekhi Garner. Both have really, I mean, the 3 of them have had pretty solid training camps. I just think Eli Ricks has shown more upside. He had, I believe, a couple interceptions, or at least I know he had 1 interception and then a few pass breakups in the preseason games. So I think for that reason that they're going to keep him. And I mean, the first 3, I named obvious, and then the other four are just. I mean, hopefully, I would imagine Keely Ringo might play more of a special team role. Same with Eli Ricks, and then Josh Jobe and Josiah Scott really being those. I mean, backup corners should anything happen to any of the starting three. But I think that's. I don't know if that because I want to hear what you would like your reaction like to that.
I'm a little bit surprised that you have them keeping 7. I mean, it feels like a lot, but the logic you laid out there is there. I mean, it just feels like a lot too, because if Zach McPherson hadn't gotten hurt, I mean, there's another corner that you could have thrown into the mix as well.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I mean, it's definitely there's a lot of talent in that corner room, but I mean, everything makes sense. I mean, Josh Jobe is definitely making this roster. Keely Ringo's definitely making the roster. I mean, Josiah Scott, like you said, he even played. He played meaningful snaps last year. So I guess the one would be kind of that 7th guy, Eli Ricks, or Mario Goodrich. Some of these other guys. Everything makes sense though. I don't know. I feel like it may just be 6 here, just because 7 feels like a lot. You don't think it feels like overkill at all to have 7?
It might, at least. I don't know. I feel like I'm pretty sure last year we had 6, but I don't know. For some reason, it's because it's so difficult because there's so much like talent. I think that's why they might be keeping a 7th, but I wouldn't be surprised if they instead put that for inside linebacker. But I feel like that's more dependent
This is
on
where the Eagles put their. I mean, look no further than what they did in the offseason with retaining Darius Slay and James Bradbury. Like, this is definitely a position there's a strong emphasis on. And if they keep 7, they could still add, Garner to the practice squad and potentially Goodrich to the practice squad. Yeah. I mean, I get everything you're saying. I mean, it all makes sense. And if they do end up just with those, 3 inside linebackers, here's a spot that they can really put that emphasis on to keep 7 guys.
Yeah, I mean, it's just that deep of a room. So it's our deepest by far.
Yeah.
So
yeah, no doubt. So I will go to safety now. I have the Steelers keeping 4 safeties: Minkah Fitzpatrick, obvious, DeMonte Casey, and Keanu Neal. The 2 others that are going to kind of supplant what the Steelers lost in Terrell Edmonds. And then I also have them keeping Miles Killebrew, who is the special teams ace. And from what I'm hearing, he's probably going to be the special teams captain as well. So that's the 4. One of my toughest cuts was Trey Norwood. And I hope that they can potentially keep him on the practice squad. I don't know if there's going to be a market if a team's going to want him, but he's a super versatile guy. He's just been injured a lot from the preseason and training camp. And I just think that, it comes down to a numbers game. And when I have them keeping a guy like Chandon Sullivan at corner, that's where Trey Norwood's going to have to be out. But if they could potentially keep him on the practice squad, that would be my ideal scenario, because I've always kind of had a soft spot for Trey Norwood, but I just don't see him making this initial 53.
See, I think that's really interesting because if I'm not mistaken, you said that the Steelers might be deploying more of a 3 safety look.
Yeah.
So that's why I kept Trey Norwood. I know you say he's more kind of special. Like, at least my logic was if you have a 3 safety look, that you might keep another like a 5th man, I guess, if that makes sense, sort of for depth purposes, in terms if someone goes down potentially. That was my thinking of it.
I think part of it is the fact that you have Elijah Riley too, who, like I said, he
true. Yeah,
kind of is more traditionally a safety. I think that was actually like what he played in college and everything. But it wouldn't shock me if they keep Trey Norwood. If they keep Trey Norwood, I'm not going to be opposed to it. Now, I will also say they haven't deployed the 3 safety look as much as I thought they were when they, kind of made this move to bring in Keanu Neal. It's been a lot of Minkah Fitzpatrick and Keanu Neal when they are in the in just kind of their base defense, and then when they go to the nickel, it becomes DeMonte Casey who goes in there for Neal, more than all 3 of them being on the field at the same time. But hey, if they decide to keep Trey Norwood, I'm not going to be totally opposed to it. And they also have what I always forget his first name. I think it's Trenton Thompson, who has had a pretty good preseason and training camp himself, who I also think is a prime player for the practice squad. You never know if maybe they keep Kenny Robinson on the practice squad as well. So they have some depth here and guys that I think will be able to go to the practice squad and be called upon if needed. So that's how I see it shaken down for the safety group.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I mean, I like that. I mean, I think that makes sense. All that logic. So, okay, moving on to the
let's
Eagles.
talk Eagles, where there's been some turnover here for the
for
the safety position.
Yeah, lost both our starters. That we already know who they are, but so I mean, the one surefire lock is going to be Reed Blankenship. That's, I mean, he didn't even play in the last game, which just pretty much it's telling because he's going to be on the roster. There's no need to put him out there if he's going to start. So that's safety number one. I mean, the other I've been reading relatively safe bet is why am I blanking on his name? Oh my god, hold on, I had him here. God damn it.
Terrell Edmonds.
Terrell Edmonds, yeah. I'm like, I have him in my head, but I'm like, but yeah, he's going to be the other one too. I mean, those two are probably going to be starting opposite each other. I mean, one safety spot, the other. So that's not really all that surprising. I mean, like you see, I mean, you saw him play for what, 4 years? So
yeah,
I mean, solid player, just
really reliable. You know what you're getting out of him.
Exactly. Yeah. So them two. I mean, and then Sidney Brown has to be on there too, I guess, because I mean he's shown a lot of promise, and maybe as I've been saying, maybe he'll eventually start down the line. But really, where it gets interesting is the last safety spot, and man, I keep wanting to cut Kayvon Wallace, but I just think the Eagles are going to keep him, and I know that the Eagles know what they're going to get with him. But I just think, I mean, he's been with them for a while and he's served more on special teams. And surprisingly, last year he didn't look terrible when he came in for snaps, for meaningful snaps when CJ Gardner-Johnson went down. So he's not like terrible. And I just don't think Justin Evans has really done much to really stay on the roster. Although others might beg to differ on that, but it's honestly, I wouldn't be shocked if Kayvon Wallace was actually cut finally, but I don't know. I just have him on the roster.
I agree wholeheartedly. I think it's going to be Kayvon Wallace who gets that last safety spot over Justin Evans. I mean, to me, it's kind of the same thing. Evans hasn't done anything to really stamp a spot saying he deserves to be on this roster, you know?
Yeah, it's maybe it was more obvious than I initially thought, but it was that last safety.
From my perspective, it seems obvious that it's Wallace.
Yeah, okay. I feel like it might have been close. It might be close. It might be, but I guess we'll find out on that.
And then to wrap things up, as far as the three specialists, it's for the Steelers. It's going to be. I think they already cut BT Potter, who was the backup kicker. But it's going to be Chris Boswell, Christian Kuntz, and Presley Harvin. I think Braden Mann is still on the roster as of right now, but I think they pretty much said it's going to be Presley Harvin. Yeah, according to this, Braden Mann is still with the team. But for the Eagles, I mean, if you guys want Braden Mann, send us a 7th round pick. You can have him.
No, I'm not sure. I'll wait till you guys cut him, but I'll take him afterwards. But I mean. Aaron Supas is going to be our punter for now, at least. I don't want to get heated over this discussion.
Give me the 7th round pick, Ricardo. You guys can have.
No, I'm not giving you anything for him. We can sign a punter like for free. Well, not for free, but you know what I mean. Like we don't have to give up anything for that.
Zettner didn't do enough to challenge.
He didn't. No, I'm pretty sure he was also cut. So, yeah, I mean that's whatever. Okay, I'm not gonna get heated over it. It's fine. We're just gonna hope the Eagles sign someone, but for now it's Aaron. So kicker Jake Elliott, obviously. I mean, one of the best last year, and he still will be. And then long snapper Rick Lovato. I mean, he's been there for since 2021. So I mean, he's just doing his job as a long snapping really. So I don't know if you wanted to touch on the punt returners and kick returners, but.
I mean, for the Steelers, like I kind of said as we were going, it's going to be for kick returning. If Anthony McFarland makes the roster, it'll be him that'll be back there.
Yeah.
But for punt returning, like I said, I cut Gunnar Olszewski, so I think it's going to be Calvin Austin the third, and he's looked really explosive doing that. And if you need him to return kicks, I'm sure you could do that as well. If they, for some reason, I really see them, if it comes down to an Anthony McFarland versus Gunnar Olszewski, I think it's definitely McFarland. So I really don't see much question with that. But what do you see for the Eagles?
I think it's the same as last year. Punt returner Britton Covey. Assuming he makes the roster, I still think he will. But kick returner Boston Scott. And Britton Covey could theoretically do both if he wanted, if the Eagles so wanted to do that. But I mean, that's pretty clear cut too. So
yeah.
No surprise.
All right, well, there's the 53 for both of these teams. So I don't know. I'm excited to see how it all shakes out and see, how much of this comes to fruition. So we will keep an eye on it. But Ricardo, any final thoughts before we wrap things up here?
Once this is over, man, I mean, we got what? I mean, even what is it, like 12 days till the regular season?
We are close, dude. We are very close. And next week we will be back with some more of a little bit of a prediction episode on schedules and just predictions for the season. So that'll be a fun one. And we will be all that much more close to the
regular season.
The regular season, man. It is an exciting time. So definitely tune in next week for that. And Ricardo, I will talk to you then. I will see you in about a week. So
dude.
We'll be hanging out. Yeah, we'll be getting together and having a fun weekend and probably talking some football and seeing what happens. And it'll be a good time. So until then, man, take it easy. Peace out, everybody.